Article 3, Section 2. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States, and treaties made or which shall be made under their authority, to all cases affecting ambassadors, other public ministers, and consuls, to all cases of admiralty and maritime jurisdiction, to controversies to which the United States shall be a party, to controversies between two or more states, blue text between a state and citizens of another state, between citizens of different states, between citizens of the same state claiming land under grants of different states, and between a state and the citizens thereof, and foreign states, citizens, or subjects. So this is who federal law applies to. Anything dealing with federal law. That's pretty obvious, really. So if you've got a case where you break a federal law, you go to federal court. Reasonable. Yeah. There are not a lot of federal courthouses relative to the number of, local courthouses, simply because fewer people break federal law.
And this is just for people who broke federal law, not for cases that went up not including cases that went up the ladder.
Yeah, the appeal structure is different. I mean, it all ends in the Supreme Court. If you break a state law and you've got a big enough case about it, you can appeal to the Supreme Court. They won't necessarily hear your case, but you can do it. But federal law goes straight to the federal court system instead of, straight to the Supreme Court out of the regular court system, the way a state or local law would. And most cases, honestly, are not going to make it to the Supreme Court regardless. And the Supreme Court has the right to say, no, we're not going to hear that case.
Unless it's, I guess this is that big of a controversy, maybe.
Generally speaking, in order to make it to the Supreme Court, you most of the time have to be appealing about the law itself and not a case. That wasn't necessarily true 200 years ago, but that is how the Supreme Court works now. Yeah. You can, if you are convicted, keep appealing your case until it reaches the Supreme Court, but those are not the big decisions that we all hear about.
Like the Dred Scott case, for example.
There are a handful of Supreme Court cases that if you don't know, you should. Dred Scott is probably the biggest. I believe it's Marbury v. Madison is the one that actually created the concept of judicial review.
Yeah.
Obergefell v. Hodges is gay marriage.
Plessy versus Ferguson.
Yeah, Plessy versus Ferguson, which was overturned in Brown versus Board of Education. Oh gosh, I cannot remember the man's name.
Thurgood Marshall?
No. Oh, Thurgood Marshall, I remember because I remember when he stepped down. He was a hoot. No, Korematsu.
Oh.
That would be Korematsu v. United States, which is the case that found Japanese internment to be legal.
Oh, another one that's important. I forget what it is. I talked about this on the Deppers board. It was the one case that legalized national birth citizenship.
Yeah. Well, and that's that's now a constitutional
amendment. Yeah, but I forget what case it was. He was a Chinese guy.
Wong Kim Ark. United States v. Wong Kim Ark is the one that I'm finding here.
Yeah, I think that's it.
And then there's There's the ever popular Epperson v. Arkansas, which prohibited the teaching of evolution in the Arkansas schools.
See, Roe versus Wade.
Roe versus Wade, sadly overturned, but yes. Edwards v. Aguilard, which banned creation science in the schools.
Is that the follow-up for that first one?
Yeah.
Like that they tried. I think they tried to get around it by calling it ID.
No, well, the thing is intelligent design has technically never made it to the Supreme Court. Kitzmiller v. Dover in 2005 was the intelligent design case, and that was tried in a federal court by a Bush the Younger appointee, as I recall. And that was the one that held that intelligent design is creation as I'm wearing a funny hat.
It's funny, until for the longest time I thought ID was just theistic evolution.
No.
No, I was like, oh, that makes sense. No, I didn't know. I had no idea it was creationism with a bow on it.
Yeah. Design proponentsists, which just it's the transitional form.
But yeah, I went to that one case because it might be relevant overturn a bit if the future president has his way of natural born citizen.
Well, yeah. I think that's another one where we'll hit Roberts' fear of being tawny, even though we've already had that moment. But I don't think he realizes we have. So I don't think he'd overturn birthright citizenship because I think it's pretty firmly enshrined in the Constitution, and everyone agrees to that. Not everyone.
Hold on, I'll be right back. Okay, now, what's the blue text?
The blue text. Between a state and citizens of another state. So if under the original Constitution, and obviously we will get to the change, but under the original Constitution, if the state of Oregon, as an entity, decided to sue the citizens of Vancouver, Washington, right across the river in Washington state, they would have to go through the Supreme Court. They would have to go through federal court, at the very least. I don't remember what it is now because I am not a lawyer, and I don't handle federal cases at the best of times, so I don't have to remember.
And obviously, all the ambassadors, military people, I guess, for all.
Yeah. Ambassadors, military people, citizens of different states. The one about land under grants of different states is not something that comes up currently very often, but it was a much bigger deal in the early days of the country. There's a book called How the States Got Their Shapes that deals with a lot of multiple people were claiming this same chunk of land. Multiple states were claiming this same chunk of land issues.
Like the Toledo issue.
Yeah, like the Toledo War. And anytime a state border has a funky little curve or notch or anything along those lines, it goes back to some issue about who got to claim that chunk of land. But yeah, most of this is obviously a state court wouldn't apply in this situation, but we're going to make sure the federal law the Constitution handles this obvious thing, which they should have done more often, if you want my opinion.
If I ever become president, I'll make you Chief Justice.
Technically unqualified, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, either you or that lady you told me about.
Yeah.